So the Crew Motorfest closed beta is coming to an end today, and I've been testing it out since Friday, deep diving into everything I could over the weekend. I've done all the events that were in the beta. I've tried absolutely everything out that I realistically could and put some good hours into it. And in all honesty, I'm absolutely loving the new direction for the Crew, and I hope it does stick. Whilst many may think this is a Forza Horizon clone, well, you're wrong. So let's get into my first video. Point number one can be none other than the atmosphere of this game. It's absolutely fantastic, and it's something that Ivory Tower has massively nailed across the board. Now, part of the beta was 5 playlists to go along with the entire thing. So we had playlists such as Made in Japan, which features an insanely good underground JDM vibe and essentially makes me wish what Need for Speed could have been if they carried on with the underground scene. We also have the likes of, the sort of Hawaii tour, which really kind of gives you a tour of the island, but gives you, typical Hawaiian vibes, surfing, views, mountains, all that good stuff. Even all the way down to the likes of the 9/11 Legacy, which sort of takes you through a trip in time, which is absolutely brilliant and kind of showcases what makes the 9/11 so special. We even have electric cars with their own atmosphere being set, and really kind of a dive into the future of what cars can be if they are done right, driving the likes of an electric Lamborghini and a electric Lotus, which we've probably seen in many games at this point. But just the atmosphere it sets around each playlist is absolutely spot on. And for me, since Forza Horizon has really dropped the ball, in my opinion, since Horizon 3, and realistically the entire festival atmosphere seems to have, I guess, faded away in terms of, just overall scale of a map and such, the Crew Motorfest really comes in and sort of picks up the baton and kind of carries it forward, bringing back insane atmosphere and vibes all around the entire map and for each different class, and it's really where this game seems to be excelling. So whether you like electric vehicles, JDM, vintage, or even the likes of planes and boats, this game sets an insane atmosphere and a unique atmosphere for each one, and it's massively the best thing I love about the Crew Motorfest. Point number 2 has to be car culture. Whilst a lot of modern video games, even far back, have a claim to be all about the cars, all about the culture of the automotive vehicles within those games, in all honesty, none of them really capture it, with many categories and many car types really kind of getting put to the back of it. Whereas with the Crew Motorfest, the entire time I just felt like every single car and every single presentation about a car, the way they drive, the way they look, the types of events that are based around them, was a proper love letter to car culture. Whether that be JDM cars at night with the neon lit signs and the whole underground street racing vibe, from drift to toge to on the street racing, all the way up to the vintage cars getting a look in and getting treated as sort of these old queens of the road that once were. Even things like you're seeing in the background here, old Volkswagen vans and Volkswagen Beetles, in their Hawaiian theme, just blasting through back roads, going for a true cruise. Even EVs getting to, a look in this game, which most of the time they get pushed to the back or they're insanely boring. Somehow the Crew Motorfest gave them personality within the game and gave them their own vibe, and kind of pushes that thing forward that this is the future of the motor vehicle. And whilst yes, it might not be great for some, they are still the future and there's still plenty to love about them. Even the likes of the Porsche 911s getting the whole legacy in there, from their motorsport heritage to their insane street cars. Every single part of this game in terms of the on-street, car vehicles feels like it is a massive love letter to each of those car cultures and scenes that come along with them. The way each car is presented and the way each car just seems to have this individual personality to it is absolutely amazing within the Crew Motorfest, and they absolutely nailed the whole vibe around the culture of cars for each individual brand, model and type. Number 3, cinematics. Now each time you jump in a playlist, you will get a playlist cinematic, really kind of showing you what each playlist is about, and well, they absolutely nailed all of them. They are fantastic, and I couldn't wait to jump into each new playlist for the first time just to see which each one was all about, with a very, very beautiful and cool cinematic. Now, I originally started gaming on the PS1 and PS2, and each racing game just had awesome cinematic intros and such, and it really feels like a modern day version of those. Some of my favorites, well, let me show you. Sticking with the kind of cinematic theme for number 4, the car reward intros. These are absolutely fantastic. Each time you complete a playlist, you are rewarded with a car, and the way this car makes its entrance to the game is absolutely awesome. So check all of these car reward intros out and let me know which is your favorite. This is a big one for me. Number 5, handling model. It is massively improved over any of the previous Crew games, whether that be the Crew 1 or the Crew 2. At times in those games the handling felt far too floaty, far too arcadey, and it was almost very difficult to distinguish certain car types apart from each other. And this is what has been massively improved upon within the Crew Motorfest. The handling model is absolutely incredible. Old muscle cars have plenty of weight with them, they're happy to slide about, and they are just great fun to drive, whereas an off-roader actually feels like it's going off-road instead of just floating over everything these times, and it feels absolutely brilliant. The handling model is a superb improvement, and in terms of pure gameplay features, this is a massive step up over any of the previous games. If you didn't like the handling model in any of the previous Crew games, in all honesty, give Motorfest a try. The cars feel weighty, they all feel different, they're distinguishable, and overall it is a massive jump up from the previous titles in this series. One of the kind of things I have to compare it to here is actually the Forza Horizon series. Whilst it is still very much in its arcade roots, just the added weight and the added feeling to each car and how it makes each car more distinguishable from the last is a massive improvement. And you know, some people might not like it, to be quite honest. If they've only ever played the Crew games and they don't really dive into any other races, it's not overly arcadey anymore. There is, you know, whilst it's still very much an arcade game, there is weight to the cars, there's better physics overall, they will react differently to different surfaces depending on the car you are driving. However, for someone that plays, you know, simcade and sim racing games mainly, this is a massive improvement and just adds to the end product. Finally, the Crew games got the handling absolutely spot on, and it is the biggest gameplay improvement of the lot. Now, another step up that massively surprised me was the visuals of the Crew Motorfest. Now, the Crew 2, in my opinion, was a little bit flat looking. At times it still looked absolutely stunning, but I remember way back when the Next Gen update got released for the Crew 2, and it got absolutely slated, mainly due to its performance mode, resolution, and kind of all the popping and that was going on upon its initial release. And you know, overall, don't get me wrong, the resolution of the PlayStation 5 update for the Crew 2 was fine, but it definitely wasn't pushing the boundaries or really all that amazing looking. That has massively changed with the Crew Motorfest. It is now absolutely visually stunning. The lighting effects at night, the lighting effects during the sunset or the sunrise, all add up to make it a beautiful and stunning map, especially considering we're now in Hawaii. The visual changes just stand out an absolute ton. I found myself in part of this beta just kind of driving around in absolute awe at just the way the entire map kind of blended itself together at certain times of day, the way that the cars actually looked overall as well, the models looking much more detailed than what we saw with the previous game. And whilst yes, this is still releasing on last gen, it really didn't feel that way when I played the PlayStation 5 version. It felt like a proper next gen only title. So my worries that the being released on the old gen would hold this game back was, you know, very much wrong. Visually on next gen, this is a stunning game and definitely sets the standard going forward for the Crew Motorfest and any games that may come after it. This is a huge step up from anything we have seen before, where, you know, most of the time the games really felt flat or some of the details in the map didn't look quite right. I didn't notice any of that while playing the Crew Motorfest. In fact, the whole time I was looking around at the scenery, it felt lush, it felt vibrant. You know, during the certain times of day, it felt exactly the way it should. The way that the lighting rolls off of the cars, the way that they, you know, light up the night and such, it was just absolutely incredible, and it really is a big step up. And in all honesty, I wasn't expecting it visually wise. I never expected too much from the Crew games, mainly just because of the scale of them. Overall, it usually does kind of take away from some of the graphics that they put out, but in all honesty, if you put this side by side with some very high graphic games like, you know, don't really want to make the comparison yet again, but Forza Horizon 5, which does look very good visually. In all honesty, at times the Crew Motorfest did feel like the better looking game, and for me that is just proof that it's made a massive step up since not only the last games, but really kind of took advantage of going on to the next generation consoles instead of it just being through a single update this time. So in at number 7 is going to be the map for me, and at first I was a little bit weary just how it would kind of match up to the sheer scale of the maps that we had in the previous Crew games, that being the entirety of the United States of America. And I still had a bit of hope considering Ivory Tower have well gone to Hawaii many times before, with it being the main star of Test Drive Unlimited 1 and obviously featuring in TDU 2 as well. And I'm safe to say the return to Hawaii has not disappointed. In my opinion, I think the Hawaiian map has grown on me much more than the Crew's United States maps ever did. This is just mainly because, although it's not as big in terms of different environments and just sights and the way it feels, it just flows together a lot more. Where the Crew 1 and the Crew 2 felt very barren at times between big cities or states, there's none of that here in Hawaii. It all flows together nicely, and whether you're taking, in the lush jungles or absolutely hurtling it down a beach in an off-road or even driving in the cities, it constantly looks visually stunning. It's constantly treating you to new sights and things to see, and it just doesn't run out of steam. This is a stunning map, a very well designed map, and just in terms of the scale and what you're going to see whilst you're in the map, it's just absolutely fantastic and doesn't disappoint. Overall, no, it is not of the scale of the original Crew games, but just in terms of what's packed into this map is much better than both of those games combined. However, I will still always love the original Crew 1 and Crew 2 maps for what they did to the racing game genre being so massive in scale. The Hawaiian map is much more rich in detail and really what it contains. But to finish off, all I can realistically say is thank you Ivory Tower for coming back to Hawaii. Number 8, events. Now this can make or break a racing game. If the events are dull and checklisty, more than likely you're just going to clock out or just completely forget the game entirely. And I'm pleased to say the Crew Motorfest comes along and picks up what was good about some of the Crew 2 events and essentially spreads it for the entirety of the game. Now during my time with the beta, we had 5 playlists, and on average there was around about 8 events per playlist, meaning there was between anywhere from 30 to 40 races that we could do. There was some more, including the likes of a Grand Prix where it was always online and basically you changed your cars during this big grand event. There was Demolition Derby Royale again, but in terms of the main single player events, 90 to 95% of them were absolutely fantastic and memorable. Whether I was blasting a Honda Civic Type R through the city in some kind of Hawaiian paint theme or doing some tailgate downhill racing in a Mazda RX-7, it always lived up to the standard. And in all honesty, the other percent that just wasn't absolutely memorable and mind-blowing still weren't boring. They just weren't up to the par that was really delivered here. It is absolutely next level. These events are insanely fun and insanely varied. From one minute you'll be blasting through a city in a neon lit JDM vibe, and the next you're kind of flying a plane, going over the seas in a boat, doing some powerboat racing, or you're just blasting it through the back of the forest and into the rainforest of Hawaii using a Dodge Challenger in a rally form. It's just absolutely incredible. All of the events are top notch, and it's one thing I'm glad to say they've kind of taken from the Crew 2, which at times felt very checklisty. They've essentially just got the best parts of that game, realized what made the events memorable in terms of the better events in that game, and then essentially gone full out within the Crew Motorfest. These are some brilliant events, and I can guarantee all the way up until release, and when the game does release and I get my hands on the full final release, I will be like, oh, I remember this event, I enjoyed this event so much. And in all honesty, with the amount of playlists coming day one to the full release, I'm insanely excited to see what they do in terms of these events. Like I said, 90 to 95% of them were absolutely fantastic, and I don't think I'll be forgetting them anytime soon. So props to Ivory Tower for some great event planning. At number 9, importing your garage. This is something that I was quite skeptical on at first, and a lot of people were massively complaining about, basically saying it's an unfair advantage and you're not being rewarded for playing the latest game. And well, after actually trying it, I disagree. For me personally, I put hundreds of hours into the Crew 2, and there's nothing worse than putting all of those hours into a game to then go to the next one in the series and lose absolutely everything. The ability to import your cars from the previous title makes sense. There's a lot of cars in this game. Just in terms of the beta, I believe there was about 700 cars or something ridiculous. Yes, there's some kind of, I guess, duplicates in terms of different forms and stuff, but you know, being able to import those cars that I've spent tons and tons of time grinding for within the Crew 2 and bringing them over to the latest release actually felt quite rewarding. Now, it isn't as kind of unbalanced as I originally thought it was going to be. They actually seem to come as bog standard cars, just with the custom parts that you've got on them. So there is no advantage being gained. You're just kind of saving yourself time having to re-grind for the same cars, and you can go ahead and focus on the latest additions to Motorfest instead of focusing on cars that you've already grinded for in the Crew 2. It's a great way to actually reward players for taking their time and, you know, playing the previous title. So yes, not losing those cars and being able to import them into the Crew 2 is absolutely fantastic. And finally, at number 10, arcade thrills. Now this for me is something that is kind of missing from many modern day racing games. It just seems to be that everyone wants to take themselves so seriously and build the next big realistic sim, and well, to see a game do quite the opposite, not bother with a silly plotted in story that's just kind of shoehorned in there to give it a bit of context, and just be all about the cars, the playlists, the boats, the planes, all of that kind of stuff, and be a pure arcade racer in 2023. This seems to be a lot to ask for. Like I said, everything else seems to be going for pure realism, or just building a full-blown racing sim that is as lifeless as possible, and essentially the Crew Motorfest is there to do the opposite. It's almost like the hero from a bygone era, bringing back arcade racing to the forefront and just being pure dumb fun. And well, that's what I really like. There's no forced story, it's fully arcade, it knows that, and it wants you to do insanely weird and wacky things with these vehicles just for the thrill of it. So being an arcade racer, well, it's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it's what makes the Crew Motorfest stand out so much in a market full of bland racers. So there we have it. After playing the Crew Motorfest beta over the weekend, that is 10 things I absolutely loved about the Crew Motorfest, and it isn't without its flaws, so maybe in the future expect a video of 5 things I might not have quite liked about the Crew Motorfest beta. However, the pros outweigh the cons by a massive amount, and this is looking to be one of 2023's best races, if not one of the best races so far of the 2020s. So if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. Turn your notifications on so you don't miss an upload from me. I try and upload each and every day for your viewing pleasure. I have my Discord, my Twitter and my donation link down in the description below. Peace.